Chanukah, a freilich Chanukah to everyone. One of the questions that's asked is, what's the connection between the parshias of Yosef being sold to slavery, and afterwards his rise to power, becomes the viceroy of Egypt, and Chanukah? And we know that what was the objective of the Yevanim? The Yevanim stopped us at three mitzvahs. Three mitzvahs they worked very, very hard to stop Klal Yisrael. Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Milah. Shabbos, we understand. Shabbos is the foundation of Judaism. It's the foundation. So it's very, very clear. Each Jew that observes Shabbos, what he's actually demonstrating is that Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. And this is what he's demonstrating to the world, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God is the one that created the world. And that's the idea of Shabbos. And the same way HaKadosh Baruch Hu rests, we rest from any type of creation. We don't turn on light, we don't create fire, right? Anything that has to do with creation, we don't do. 39 malachas. And Rosh Chodesh. What's the idea of Rosh Chodesh? Without Rosh Chodesh, you don't have any of the Yom Tovim. You don't have any of the holidays. You need to know when it begins. When does the month begin? So Rosh Chodesh. And then you have Milah. Bris Milah is the covenant. Bris Milah is the connection that we have between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Going back all the way to Avraham Avinu, that's when it began. What's interesting is that the mitzvah of Milah is a mitzvah that almost every Jew took upon himself. Every Jew took upon himself. It's so interesting. Many of you know that I'm a Moyel, and I go around from place to place doing bris milas. And many times I come upon a family that has no religion whatsoever. I walk into the house, there's nothing there. In fact, the other religions are displayed over there. Sometimes there's a Christmas tree, sometimes whatever but they're doing a bris. And I ask the parents, I ask the father, what made you want to do this bris? And the father looks at me and he's perplexed. You're the rabbi, you're the mayo. Why are you asking me this? I'm a Jew. And in my mind, what's going in back of my mind, wait a minute, there's 613 mitzvahs. What made you pick this mitzvah over everything else? Why this mitzvah? And I believe that one of the main reasons that this mitzvah trumps any other mitzvah in terms of the Jew that would go to all ends to do it is because that's in a Jew's flesh. That's in his body. It's a mark that I am Jewish. And I want to tell you, the amazing part is, many of the Russians came from Russia, and obviously over there they could not have brisim. And there are so many stories that would bring you to tears, that people did not want to have not local anesthesia, not general anesthesia, yet people that came and said, I want to feel the mitzvah. I want to feel what it means being Jewish. Not to be believed. And parents would take their children, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, and the children would go. The children would not protest because it's one mitzvah that's in their heart. It's part of them. It's in their neshama. Now, Yavan was pulling back on that mitzvah. Why? Because Yavan served the body. Yavan's entire purpose was to idealize, to turn into an idol, our body. And they felt that the greatest pleasure, and this is really what they wanted to give Klal Yisrael, they cared about us. They wanted us to be a part of them. They said, you know what, you can't enjoy life. You're missing out on the good parts of life by sticking in this spiritual stuff. Get rid of it. They didn't believe in it. And therefore the bris represented where the enjoyment of a human being was, and they didn't want to touch it. Don't touch it. But the Jew, on the other hand, understood much different. The Jew understood that the enjoyment has to be coupled with spirituality in order for us to really enjoy, to really have a full level of enjoyment. It has to be together with the spirituality. And this is something that Yavon could not understand. It bothered them very, very much. And it's interesting because we know Yosef HaTzadik represented the exact opposite. We know Yosef was very beautiful, physically beautiful. And it says that Yosef used to play with his hair. He was a beautiful person. But he wasn't only beautiful on the outside, he was also beautiful on the inside, which means to say he also fused together spirituality with his beauty. That was his job. Yosef HaTzadik would be able to go to the greatest place of Tumah and be able to grab the spirituality out of it. Yavon, on the other hand, was able to go to the greatest place of Kedusha and eliminate all the Kedusha and just put physicality. Where do we see that? We see Yosef HaTzadik going down to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was the worst place of Tumah possible. There was not a vestige of Kedusha there. And yet, Yosef HaTzadik brings up two Shvatim, Ephraim and Menashe. We have trouble bringing up good children in Brooklyn, right? And yet, Yosef HaTzadik is able to go to a place which is completely empty and gather up all the Kedusha and produce an Ephraim and Menashe. That's the power of Yosef. Take Yavon, on the other hand. They go to the greatest place of Kedusha. They go to the Beis HaMikdash, to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And they turn it into they defile it. That was the power of Yavon. So there's a struggle over here. One pulls to Kedusha. One is able to make Tumah into Kedusha. One is able to take beauty and infuse it with Kedusha. And the other way, one takes Kedusha and eliminates it to achieve beauty. They feel like it can't coexist. So much so that what's the bracha that Yaakov Avinu gives Yosef? He gives him a bracha of Bechar Shar Hadarlai. You're going to be an ox. You're going to be the one that's responsible to pave the way for Klal Yisrael going down to Mitzrayim and eventually up. You're going to be the one to sustain the Jewish nation. And yet, what does Yavon do? Yavon's just the opposite. Yavon tells Klal Yisrael, "Ve'ato kisvu lochem al keren ashar ein li chelek be'elokei Yisrael." Just the opposite. They would tell all of Klal Yisrael, they didn't have baby bottles. Gerber wasn't around. So what did they do? They took a horn, they filled it up with milk, and the kid drank. So they told every parent, you have to write on that horn, Ein li chelek be'elokei Yisrael. I have no part in God. And the kids would drink it, and it would go into their system. So here you have both of these struggles. Yavon trying to eradicate any vestiges of spirituality. Yosef is able to imbue in Tumah spirituality and create amazing, amazing accomplishments, even in a place like Mitzrayim. What was at the core of this argument? Klal Yisrael felt and understood that if you just enjoy life without spirituality, without HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then that's not true enjoyment. You know what happens to a person that enjoys physicality again and again and again and again? Guess what? He becomes an addict. He becomes addicted. What happens when a person becomes addicted? He needs that same item, he needs that same vodka or that same drink, but it no longer gives him the pleasure. It no longer produces the pleasure anymore. So he needs the physical aspect of it, but the pleasure is gone. And this Yavon didn't understand. Yavon ran only after that pleasure. We Jews, of course we like pleasure. We enjoy pleasure more than anybody, but we know how to get it better than anybody. Think about it. Think about how much we enjoy pleasure. We have once a week. Everybody's off. We bring out the best foods. Cholent, kugel, every type of food possible. And if you're a Sephardi, you got the lachmajin, and you got the kibbeh, and you got... Who enjoys life this way? We don't like pleasure. We love pleasure. Pleasure is great. But we fuse it with spirituality, so that pleasure, when we turn back and we had such a good time, we say, wow, you know what? We didn't waste our time because that time was elevated. HaKadosh Baruch Hu enjoys the fact that we're having a good time with the cholent and the kugel and the kibbeh and the lachmajini. He loves it. But we're taking the physical and we're imbuing spirituality into it. If you add 52 weeks plus all the Yomim Tovim, you end up with maybe 80 days that the Jews are partying every year. Tell me one nation that parties away 80 days. Who does that? So we want pleasure? We love it. Together with spirituality, we elevate the pleasure, and then it's true pleasure. It's not addiction. It's not where we have to take something and we're like, we can't stand it anymore, but we need it because our body won't let us survive without it. And that was the core difference between Yavon and between Klal Yisrael.